Here's what the version 4, my version 4 of the hydrojet thruster looks like that I have in this video. This is the exploded view. This is the motor mount, which would drop right down to these screw holes. Motor would go through there, and the shafts would come out here with a coupling connect to that, and the shaft would come to the propeller. The propeller would be slipped inside, and this is the steering nozzle, which will actually be mounted with screws on the top and bottom on here, and it will pivot on this little hole that's right here. So now steering nozzle is back and forth, like so. And this is a reversing nozzle, I call it a cup, which will actually sit on top of this assembly. So this whole assembly will swing back and forth with the reversing cup on it, and that's where I had to come up with a kind of unusual linkage so that everything would work out right. And the cup is in the running position, which will be like so. So the water thrust is coming through here and out, and for it to reverse, the cup would come down, and the water is deflected through this nozzle and back out here. And you can see there's a little, like a half a cone shape in here, so that the water is deflected off to the sides so that it doesn't interfere with the water intake very much. And it works very well. So once I had the basic hull shape inputted, I decided to make the cockpit, and I made all of these pieces. This is not how it actually turned out, but this was the start. First was the outer ring, and then I made some seats that went in here, which actually wound up being bench seats with a little console. The pieces of the cockpit itself are made in several parts. Here happens to be the wind deflector and the dashboard. And this happens to be the top of the engine cover. And this is where the scoop is for input. Made a separate piece and glued them together. And then, of course, my 3D printer, which has worked out well, running several thousand parts through it, probably about 3,000, 4,000. I have lost count. So at this point, I'm going to start assembling the jet boat, the hydrojet boat. As you can see, we've got already got the unit installed, connected up to the prop shaft, and the two servos installed. 3D printed some mounting blocks for the servos, and we have one servo for the steering, which moves here, and the other servo for the reversing cup that drops down. We've got a grease fitting we put in here, and drilled in after the fact. I'm running a 380 SH motor, and it's supposed to give me about 9,000 RPM at the 7.2 volts that I'm using. There's the intake for the water. These hydro drives really don't work very well as far as running in reverse on their normal. In other words, I could not run this very well backwards. It'll take a little bit, but it's taking it through such a small hole and pushing out a big opening, and it's not very efficient at all. It might just slightly drift forward if it was running in reverse like that. So what we do is we put this reversing cup on here. It goes on the end of the steering nozzle, and the servo normal forward position would be like that. Reverse would come down. The water would flow through this hole and come out these two holes, and it's kind of spread apart. It's like a wedge-like shape inside, so that it would bypass the water inputs. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this device back on. Okay, the next step I'm going to be putting on is the steering deflector and the reversing deflector. First, I put the collar on the linkage for the steering, and I have to get this top screw in first because the push rod assembly will go right over that screw. I got one screw on the top and one screw on the bottom. And we'll tighten that down and just leave a little bit of play in it so nothing's binding. You can see the top one needs to go down a little bit more. I'm just looking at the clearance underneath the head of the screw. Now we can flip this one over and put the reversing collar on that rod. And then we can run our quick test to make sure the connections are okay. Now we should have steering left to right. It's going to make a right turn. It's going to make a left turn. And then this is going to be the switch to put the reversing nozzle down, like so. We turn that to the side and see how that action works. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to put the board in and make all of the connections. First, I'm going to get the electronics ready, and I have it set so that the motor turns in the right direction for the prop and a faster output of the motor. Most of the motors turn better in one direction than the other, so they'll be known as a clockwise motor or counterclockwise motor. I put a tachometer on it and measure the speed so I know which way to hook it up. So that goes back to channel 5. Channel 5 and channel 1. In this case, I have 2 antennas, so I made little hooks underneath here. The one faces on the side. One faces right across the transom here, and this will allow the 90 degrees angle set by recommended by the manufacturer. Next, we'll put the battery in, and we'll connect up the battery. I left that on, so we know the connection works. Turn the radio back. Okay. Turn all that off. And the next thing I'm going to put together is the console in the front. And I've got 2 places, 1 and 2. Okay, now we're going to fasten down the back part, and we're going to put some screws in here. tight. So this whole front section is going to be held in place pretty securely. Because once that's in, the only reason I need to get back in there is probably just to get at the motor and the motor wiring. The battery and everything will come apart where the assembly is right now. I glued in a little seat belt here for our trooper. And if everything goes well, we'll just get another trooper to sit beside him and maybe figure out some armament for this guy. A little seat belt on him. I think OSHA requires that. And I got it so that the steering control lines up pretty cool, pretty close to where his hands go. Just adjust his arms and hands a little bit. These things are, this is the Black Series 6-inch figures for a 1/12 scale. Fits in there pretty good like that, holding on, ready to go. Go get those good guys. Okay, next part's going to be the back cover. The back cover lets me access both disconnecting the battery for charging as well as turning this thing on and off. And this uses the same studs that come up from the bottom as that hold down the circuit. So now once we have that down, then the last thing is the cover, which will kind of snap in place. Actually, it snaps in place pretty good. It's the first time I actually put that together. Again, and with 3D printing is great. What I did is I created the top shape of the boat, and I designed the cockpit, and I subtracted that shape off because the boat does have some tumble foam to it, or curve to the deck. It's also a little curved this way. So once I did that and designed everything, then I could build on it and add and subtract pieces, and so that it goes together virtually like that. So now it looks like we're ready to go. And as I said, to turn this unit on, all I have to do is come in here and turn on the transmitter, get my cover back in place. I think that's going to withstand being flown off, and I think it'll float because some of the speeches are in here hollow. So let's go. I'm going to go speed, and then we can come here. We'll go to our steering, left, right, reverse, and I think we're ready for the water. But as I said, we'll make a few more modifications to this, add some more marking on it, but it's basically done as far as ready for the water. And here we have a little bit better view of what's going on here. And the Empire is getting ready to strike back.